at Mertech.com with your daily news update. Okay, here we are on January the 27th. It's January the 27th in the year of our Lord 2026. And as usual, I have a lot of great information for you. So let's click over here, Mertech on Rumble. And this is my Rumble channel. This is the video we're working on tonight, episode 1820. Let's go ahead and get into that. Pause this, close out the live chat. Let me slide down here and click the Show More button to expand out the description box. And we have information from AP for Liberty, Dr. Steve Turley, the Rubin Report, and Wendy Bell Radio. But before we get into that, I do have some shout-outs to get. A lot of people followed me today. Review All just started following my channel. Army Vet 69 just started following my channel. Valerie Hort-Nancy just started following my channel. Refixer just started following my channel. Rother B just started following my channel. Jim Baca just started following my channel. And Betty Higgy just started following my channel. So thank you very much, folks, for following my channel. I greatly appreciate that. I hope you're tuned in, and I hope you enjoy the content. Okay, Debbie BS reposted my episode 1819, and Debbie BS commented on my extra 602A and 602B. So thank you very much, Debbie BS, for reposting my video and posting your comments. I enjoy reading your feedback, and I certainly appreciate your support. So let me give this a thumbs up. And if I might remind you that I do have a thumbs up button right here below the video that you're watching right now. If you could slide down and click that, it would be fantastic. Okay, AP for Liberty, Austin Peterson, ILHAN'S 44 million, the RICO case exploding, the Minnesota fraud ring. All right, well, let's check this out here.
Criminal. I don't know how she gets out of this without going to jail. Have a look at this.
Let me back this up.
Show schedule. Let's get it on.
I just investigated Ilhan Omar's official financial disclosures, and what I found was so dark and criminal. I don't know how she gets out of this without going to jail. Have a look at this. Here's Ilhan Omar's financial disclosure from the Congressional Record, year 2023. I want to bring your attention to this company right down here, Est Crew LLC. This is a winery in Santa Rosa, California. It's not doing that well. The total value of the winery is listed at $15,000, and Ilhan Omar's barely making any money off of it at all. Hardly enough to pay a parking ticket. Okay, that's fine. Nothing really mysterious there. Businesses fail all the time. But go ahead and look at her filing for 2024, and you'll find that Est Crew Winery, the same company in the same location, is now worth $5 million. That's incredible, up from $15,000. And now Ilhan Omar's making enough to pay rent. So this must be one of the most successful companies ever. Let's go ahead and check in on this winery. You know, maybe we could buy some wine. I like wine. Why not? Let's see if we can buy some Est Crew Winery. Here's Est Crew's social media Facebook page. You'll see here that the last post, oh no, was in 2023. Wasn't this the year that they were supposed to, go really big and make Ilhan Omar millions of dollars? Same thing on their Instagram, and they don't have an X. So let's go ahead and check their official website. What is Est Crew? We are winemakers and memory curators, okay? Est Crew Winery has a bunch of brands that's led by these people, creators of eye-catching labels. So I'm sure I can go and get some of their wine, right? Well, they don't have any activities here, so maybe I can just go to their location and buy some of their wines, or maybe give them a call. Let's try and go to their location here. This is the Google Street View of Est Crew Winery, and what you'll find here is an empty parking lot. Doesn't actually look like an operational business. Certainly isn't the same name. So, okay, let's go ahead and give them a call. See if maybe they pick up. Let's go ahead and call the number on the webpage. Let's go ahead and give them a call and find out. Oh no, user busy. Let's try that. Okay. Well, I've done this like 20 times today. Okay, so that didn't work. Is there any wine in this wine company? Is there anything about wine? Because I see like stuff about events, but like, what is this exactly? Aren't you supposed to sell wine at your wine company? Where are your wines? Oh, there are no wines. You want to know why? Because this is a fake company. Rep. Ilhan Omar's husband accused of swindling investors in their California winery. They stole millions from cannabis growers.
Guys,
see,
it's time for a crackdown. If you thought that the chaos in the streets of Minneapolis was just a local protest over immigration, you are being fed a lie designed to keep you from seeing the largest public program heist in the history of the United States. We aren't just talking about a few $1 million. We are talking about a staggering $9 billion in taxpayer funds diverted from hungry children and the disabled into the hands of a sprawling state-sponsored criminal enterprise. U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson didn't mince words when he called Minnesota the national poster child for public corruption. While Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison were busy signaling their virtues, federal investigators were busy counting the bodies, metaphorically and literally. Look at the Feeding Our Future scandal. 78 suspects indicted. Excuse me. Look at the Feeding Our Future scandal. 78 suspects indicted. Dozens already pleading guilty. We have defendants like Muhammad Ismail, who was just sentenced to 12 years and ordered to pay $47 million in restitution. Only $75 million has been recovered because the rest was blown on luxury hotels, overseas investments, and wired directly to terrorist networks in East Africa. More on that later. This isn't just theft. This is financial hollowing out of a sovereign state by a group that views your tax dollars as a war chest for global instability. Here's the Ilhan Omar question. While the people of Minneapolis are struggling and dying in the streets because of their officials, the elite of Minnesota are thriving. President Trump officially announced Monday that the DOJ is investigating Representative Ilhan Omar. He's pointing at a ledger that shows a 3,500% increase in her net worth. Omar, who famously arrived in this country with nothing, is now reportedly worth over $44 million, and her husband is accused of defrauding investors in California, and we just saw the report from Benny Johnson on that wine business that looks fake as hell. So how does a congresswoman on a fixed government salary pull it off, right? You follow the husband, Tim Minette. His firm, Rose Lake Capital, miraculously jumped in value from $1,000 to $25 million in a single year. His winery, St. Croix Wines, jumped from $15,000 to $5 million. Most successful business in history. At least 3 individuals tied directly to Omar have been indicted in these fraud schemes. She claims this is a disinformation campaign, but Chairman James Comer and the Oversight Committee in the House are asking the only question that matters. How is it possible for a net worth to explode like this while your own district becomes the epicenter of a multi-billion-dollar fraud ring? The DOJ is looking for the link between the signal mobs in the streets and the millions in the bank accounts. If the receipts match the rhetoric, the squad is about to face a very different kind of justice. But the money needs protection, and that's why the streets of Minneapolis have been turned into a paramilitary zone. The protests impeding ICE agents aren't organic. They are a coordinated criminal conspiracy fueled by encrypted apps like Signal. Federal investigators believe that these mobs are a smokescreen designed to protect the fraud infrastructure from federal raids. The DOJ has already secured RICO convictions against the Highs gang in Minneapolis. That's a violent criminal enterprise that used murder and intimidation to control the streets. And make no mistake, the administration is looking at the signal mobs through that same RICO lens. If you coordinate the obstruction of a federal officer to protect a criminal ring, you are a racketeer, not a protester. Trump has seen enough, and he has threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act to quickly put an end to the travesty of professional agitators attacking federal officers. He's calling out Tim Walz and Jacob Frey as a modern-day segregationist governor for refusing to allow federal agents into local jails, forcing these dangerous street confrontations that led to the deaths of Renee Good and Alex Pretty. If the local police won't enforce the law, Trump is signaling that the military will, and it seems that last night, Governor Walz finally cracked and appeared to send in the local police officers to do arrests.
You are now under arrest. Please sit down and wait for instruction.
I'm on level 12 news.
I can't hear you.
I'm at level 12 news. Beach me on the scene. I'm just pressed.
You don't have any press credentials?
I don't. I can tell you
On January 19th, Senator Eric Schmidt of Missouri introduced the SCAM Act, the Stop Citizenship Abuse and Misrepresentation Act. The White House-backed bill would expand federal authority to strip citizenship from naturalized Americans convicted of felony fraud, serious felonies, or joining terrorist organizations. Schmidt was explicit in his statement, the rampant fraud uncovered in Minnesota must be a wake-up call. We were talking on this show last week. Citizenship should come with a list of caveats. If you want to move to the United States, you have to agree that you're not going to come here and be the head of a criminal fraud ring. Otherwise, you might lose your citizenship and get sent back to Somalia. The United States of America is not Jesus. You don't get saved and then just get to stay forever and continue to sin. So if you lied on your oath, or if you used your citizenship as a shield to wire taxpayer billions to Al-Shabaab, your time in this country is over. President Trump has sidelined Kristi Noem and sent Border Czar Tom Homan directly to Minneapolis to take over ICE operations. Probably wise, considering some of the comments that Kristi Noem has been making in recent days. Tom Homan will be reporting directly to the president, not Noem. This is a reset. It's a move to refocus on criminal targets and shut down the Metro surge chaos. We're seeing a pincer movement. Homan on the streets, Schmidt in the Senate, and the DOJ at the bank. Wake up, America. The era of the sanctuary scam is hitting a brick wall. Wake up, America. If you want to know why the federal government is moving with such lethal force in Minnesota, you have to follow the money. And that money doesn't stop at state lines. We are talking about the Hawala Pipeline, an ancient, shadowy money transfer system that bypasses every bank, every regulator, and every oversight committee in the Western world. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has officially opened a formal investigation into whether your tax dollars stolen through these fraud schemes are being used as a war chest for Al-Shabaab. Federal counterterrorism sources have confirmed that millions of stolen dollars have been funneled through little Mogadishu storefronts directly into the hands of Al-Qaeda-linked terrorists in East Africa. One confidential source told investigators the largest funder of Al-Shabaab is the Minnesota taxpayer. Think about that while you're paying your property taxes. In 2023 alone, the Somali diaspora sent back $1.7 billion, more than the entire budget of the entire Somali government. U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson has revealed these fraud rings are staggering, industrial-scale operations that form a web of corruption. They didn't just overbill the taxpayers. They created purely fictitious companies to buy luxury real estate in Nairobi and Turkey. That moves this case from simple welfare fraud to material support for terrorism. This is the RICO enterprise that justifies the federal hammer, because you didn't just steal, you funded the enemies of Western civilization. How did they get away with this for so long? Well, they used the nonprofit protection racket. We now have the expletive-filled text messages from Amy Bach, former director of Feeding Our Future. This is the organization that's at the heart of a $250 million conspiracy. When site operators complained about missing payments, Bach didn't call an auditor. She called her lawyer to terrify them with subpoenas. She would literally text her associates, and I quote, She is the only problem you guys are having, so she needs to be handled. We may have become the mob. And she was right. This wasn't a charity. This was a paramilitary-style organization designed to rule the world, or at least Minnesota, that used scorched earth tactics against critics, while Bach herself reportedly pocketed nearly $2 million in the scheme. And look at the tactics. Bach and her team, they used fake meal counts and doctored rosters to claim that they were serving thousands of meals a day from dilapidated storefronts that didn't even have a kitchen. The DOJ is now investigating whether the signal mobs that are currently attacking ICE agents in the streets are the enforcement arm of this same nonprofit mafia. So if the money stolen from the USDA paid for the bricks being thrown at federal officers, every single person in that signal chat is a racketeer in the eyes of the law. Arrest, denaturalize, and deport.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause that here. Great information. I like Austin Peterson. He does great stuff. I mean, he has a show every weekday. Let me jump over here and show you this video does come from AP for Liberty. Austin Peterson. I am following his channel. I've given him a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. And I'm going to make sure this is in my... Yeah, there we go. It's going to be in my daily news wrap-up playlist, so you can watch the rest of this if you want to. It's like a 3-hour video. I'm 21 minutes into it. Okay, let's go ahead and jump back here to our layout. Here we go. Okay, let me close out the live chat again. Slide down here. Dr. Steve Turley, Trump doubles down on ICE as new polls crush Minneapolis protesters. Sounds interesting.
Rhinos thought they could intimidate the Trump administration into backing off from their crackdown on Minneapolis. They were in for one rude awakening. In fact, what Trump just did changes everything, all while a new poll just dropped that's absolutely devastating for the woke left. Stick me to the very end of this video, because what I'm about to show you proves the American people are speaking loud and clear, and the radical Democrats are not going to like what they hear. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your patron professor, here to help you make sense of the madness with breaking news and analysis you're not going to get anywhere else. So you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. The lying, dying legacy media concocted their newest hoax this weekend. They are doubling down. They are circling the wagons, trying to convince their rapidly dwindling audience. And by the way, that's not an exaggeration. The Washington Post is just announced they're going through yet another round of massive layoffs. In fact, they may end up folding their entire sports division. It's that bad. They're literally hemorrhaging readers. Even their owner, Jeff Bezos, admitted that nobody trusts the legacy media anymore. But alas, today, they're giving us yet another reason to dismiss them. They are desperately trying to convince their rapidly dwindling audience that the American people have turned on ICE and federal immigration enforcement, that the ICE raids in Minneapolis are backfiring. And now even Republicans are calling on the Trump administration to back off on their mass deportation efforts. This, of course, after the shooting of Alex Preddy, the 37-year-old ICU nurse who got into a tussle with federal agents and ended up pulling out his concealed handgun and got himself shot. The American people are outraged over this, we are told, just like they were with the killing of Renee Good. Clearly, no one voted for this. The American people don't want this. And so Trump has got to back down and let Minneapolis continue to degenerate into the American Mogadishu. Senate Democrats are now even threatening another government shutdown over all of this, refusing to fund ICE agents terrorizing American citizens. And Minneapolis residents are rising up like never before, demanding ICE agents leave their city, yada, yada, yada. That's the narrative that the lying, dying legacy media is going with. And it would be great if it weren't for the fact that, once again, it is patently untrue. Sure, Feckless rhinos can always be counted on to buckle under pressure and turn on Trump. That's not news. That's what rhinos do. That's just Lisa Murkowski fulfilling her job description. No, this entire narrative is completely contradicted by the latest polls that just dropped that show that the majority of the American people are most definitely supportive of Trump and these deportation efforts. A new poll from the PUP Research, that's Plymouth Union Public Research, shows that 74% of Americans believe fighting illegal immigration is important. 44% believe it is very important. Just 7% believe it's not important at all. And those are the ones that you see rioting in Minneapolis. They represent 7% of the population, according to this PUP poll. And to make it even worse, a plurality support and approve of ICE and Border Patrol, despite 24/7 round-the-clock negative coverage by the legacy media. The latest YouGov poll gives ICE agents a 45% favorable rating as compared to a 42% unfavorable rating, made up entirely of Kamala Harris voters. Many commentators are noting that a +3 approval of the single most controversial federal law enforcement agency is pretty darn good. But here's the big one. This is the one that's absolutely devastating for these far-left insurrectionists. 57% of Americans believe ICE agents should be able to do their job without being impeded or harassed. 6 in 10 reject what these lunatic leftist agitators are doing. 58% believe ICE agents put their lives on the line to keep the public safe. 57% believe ICE agents have the dangerous job of keeping us safe from violent criminals. And 51% approve of using ICE agents to combat illegal immigration. The study found that organized efforts to obstruct enforcement, quote, draw limited sympathy and appear confined to a very small but vocal slice of the electorate. So this poll shows even stronger support for ICE than the YouGov poll. But both corroborate that what's happening in Minneapolis, this literal insurrection, is actually repugnant to the vast majority of the country, which simply means that the vast majority of the country sides with common sense. That's what Secretary of War Pete Hegseth pointed out when he posted this meme. You're going to love this. How to avoid ICE. Step 1, don't be here illegally. Step 2, don't attack ICE officers. And step 3, obey federal and state laws. It's brilliant, straightforward, and it triggered every single leftist in America because it pointed out the obvious. It is very, 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 very hard for a U.S. citizen to get killed by an ICE agent. It's actually easier to get attacked by a shark than for an American citizen to get killed by an ICE agent. You have to work really, really, really hard. You have to be exceptionally talented at putting yourself directly in harm's way for that to happen, for you to get killed by federal Border Patrol. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem didn't pull any punches either. She came out and called Alex Pretty's actions, quote, domestic terrorism. She said, and I quote, when you perpetuate violence against a government because of ideological reasons and for reasons to resist and perpetuate violence, that is the definition of domestic terrorism. He was carrying a loaded 9mm with 2 magazines. He was engaged in illegally obstructing federal law enforcement, and you cannot have a concealed weapon when committing a crime, let alone pull it out while committing the crime. And Trump knows that. President Trump knows that, and what he just did as of today changes everything. Wait till you see this. For decades, our dietary guidelines told...
Okay, he's going into a commercial here, so let me get past that. That looked pretty good.
...to immunity, covers the patch toxin. Hey, you can get 8% off. 59 himself, 0233. So guess who Trump is sending to Minneapolis? It is none other than the skull crusher himself, border czar Tom Homan. Far from backing off or scaling back after the shooting this weekend, Trump is doubling down on immigration enforcement in Minneapolis by sending in his border czar and former ICE chief to Minnesota. Trump announced just hours ago that Homan will be traveling to Minneapolis as of today and report directly to him, describing him as tough but fair and tasking him with managing ICE operations on the ground to continue arresting what the administration calls the worst of the worst criminal illegal aliens. But also at the same time, Homan's mission includes coordinating investigations into what Trump and the White House are describing as a massive $20 billion plus welfare fraud in Minnesota, which Trump claims, of course, is at least partially responsible for fueling the organized protests. They're obviously interconnected in all kinds of ways. At the very least, the more fraud we're discovering and uncovering, the more unhinged, the more what you want to call frenetic Tim Walz becomes. I mean, his rhetoric gets crazier and more extreme as he tries to whip up these radical leftists into a frenzy so as to distract his own Minnesota constituents from all the fraud he's obviously been involved in with their money, of course. So the White House says that Homan will oversee both ICE enforcement and these fraud probes, while Trump is simultaneously calling for investigations into the ultra-repulsive Representative Ilhan Omar, alleging that she left Somalia with nothing and is now worth tens of millions of dollars. She literally had nothing back in 2018 when she first won her congressional seat. And now she and her husband are reportedly worth $30 million. How does that happen in such a short period of time? That yield would leave someone like Warren Buffett in the dust. So Trump is looking into that as well. And that's because Trump knows precisely where the American people are in all of this. Americans want deportations. They want border security. And they want crooked and corrupt politicians held accountable. And ironically, even the far left is beginning to notice this. We've talked about this before, this unstoppable doom loop that the Minneapolis far left has been caught up in, where historically movements that face the federal government's escalation ladder, they inevitably splinter. The movement inexorably fractures between those advocating continued escalation and those recognizing the strategic dead end of it all, between those who want to continue to confront versus those who recognize that every confrontation only increases their chances of getting shot. So this is why it's been widely observed that the number of agitators in Minneapolis is actually going down. It's dwindling. It's getting smaller. The killing of Alex Preddy over the weekend did not draw out the millions upon millions of protesters that they were hoping for. This is an insurrection movement that is slowly but surely going the way of all other insurrectionist movements. It's dying out. And again, Trump knows it. So rest assured, Trump is holding the line. He's doubling down, and he's crushing the agitators, all the while deporting their once future voters. Minneapolis is indeed ground zero for mass deportations, and all signs show we are winning.
All right. Great information. Let me click on the Rumble link here and show you that this video does come from Dr. Steve Turley. I am following the channel. I've given him a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. All right, let's jump back here and see what Dave Rubin has to say on the Rubin Report. Somali immigrant reveals the truth about Minnesota fraud from E.I. Hirsi Ali. Must be Irish. Okay, let's jump in here and see what that's all about.
So it's got three components. There's the Somali ethnic bloodline component that we've just been discussing. And they do have an alternative moral system. They don't see what they're doing as stealing. They see it as helping family and helping the bloodline. And so if there's this alien, weak system that is dishing out money, if you don't take it, you're stupid. And also the assumption is we're not the only ones who would be doing such a thing. All smart people would be doing that.
I'm Dave Rubin, and joining me today is the founder of the Ayaan Hirsi Ali Foundation and the host of the Ayaan Hirsi Ali podcast. Ayaan Hirsi Ali, I've said your name 3 times in the first sentence. How are you, my friend?
Oh, Dave, I'm doing very well. It's lovely to see you and speak to you. And yeah, great. Doing
Well,
wonderful.
it is always a pleasure to see and speak to you. And, we connected for 30 seconds before we started recording here. And you said something like, we're old friends in this at this point, which seems kind of crazy. I mean, I think I interviewed you for the first time probably fall of 2015. So we're rolling into our 11th year together. You have been fighting for Western freedom since well beyond that. But I thought maybe for some of my audience that is not totally familiar with you, and they should be, and we'll link to all your books below and everything else. There's so much talk about Somalia these days, and I think people are so confused about the history of Somalia, the American Somali population. We talk about ILHAN all the time. Can you just clean up some of that, perhaps, and maybe connect it to a little bit of your personal journey, and then we can dive into some of the issues of the day?
And don't forget Somaliland, and they want
And
independence, and I think it's a good thing, and so on.
yeah.
Yes. I was born in Somalia in November of 1969, and Somalia became independent in 1960, and independent from British Somaliland. That is the region that now wants to become independent. And then there was an Italian Somaliland, and that's where my father comes from. And also that's where I was born, but I was born after independence. And, as I don't know how familiar your audience is with African history, but usually after independence, people have these incredibly high hopes of building nation states that will thrive and that, hold all of these different clans together and different tribes. And for Somalia, that didn't materialize after the white man left. Because soon after, my father was one of the people who wanted to make a Somalia that looked a little bit like America. You come in and, you have founding fathers that designed this beautiful constitution and lay down these pillars, and everybody's going to subscribe to that, and we'll build this great nation state. That's not what happened. In October of 1969, the Soviet Union, I would say, pretty much marches in by using a local Somali sergeant. And ever since, it's been chaos. So I was born into that upheaval. But within these great power politics mix of, the two, during the Cold War, the two hemispheres, Soviet Union versus United States, in Somalia, what predated and still goes through and is the permanent, I would say, feature of Somalia is the bloodline. It's the clan. And I remember being 5, 6, 7 years old, and my grandmother sitting my siblings and I down under a tree and teaching us our clan line. That's like your passport. I am Ayaan, the daughter of Hirsi, who is the son of, and so on and so on. And every child is taught that. That is your welfare state. That is your benefit state. That's who you fight for and who you die for. That's your identity. And to supplement that identity was Islam. And what happened in Somalia, as in many other different parts in the world, was from about the 1980s, petro-Islamism came into our shores. And there was an attempt to reverse things so that where Islam supplements the clan bloodline, it became now that the clan supplements the bloodline. In that sense, I don't know who's prevailing at the moment, but there is this, everything that the clan holds dear, Islam enforces anyway. So when I was a little girl, I didn't have to wear the hijab, but little 5-year-olds today in Somalia wear the hijab. Maybe that's the difference. It's an Islamization in a society that was already clan, bloodline oriented and Muslim.
Right.
Anyway,
And then, sorry, go ahead.
I wanted to say fast forward because my father was modernized. He went to Columbia University. He didn't just accept this coup of Mohammed Siad Barre in 1969. He went into exile and mobilized other men and decided to fight him. And this was occurring in Ethiopia, which then forced my mother and my siblings and my mother's mother to leave the country. So I've been exposed to, besides Somalia, I was in Saudi Arabia with my siblings. We lived in Ethiopia and we lived in Kenya. And during that time that we were living in the diaspora, we were looked after by the clans. That's just, I just want to illustrate that is how the clan system, how the bloodline works. When people ask me, how did you pay your rent? Where did you get food from? Who did this for you? And wherever we go, there are Somalis. And if I meet you today, I'm not just going to say, hey, your name is Dave Rubin. I'm going to ask, you're the son of who? And you're going to say, you're the daughter of who? And then we try and track the bloodline, and we'll get somewhere when we maybe trust one another and help one another. Or maybe we'll get to a place where we keep our distance and we feel that there's a sense of tension and animosity. And that's how it works.
So there's so much there that I think connects to what's going on right now. We don't have to tell the rest of your story at the moment, and again, we'll link to some of those earlier interviews. But you're ultimately fleeing and eventually becoming a member of parliament in Holland, and then your friend Theo Van Gogh being killed with a threat to you, and then subsequently over the last decade plus becoming an unbelievable fighter for Western values and individual rights and freedom and all of those things. But I want to focus on the clan thing for a moment because there's a video from probably 3 or 4 months ago where Ilhan Omar is on, who obviously is Somalian, where she's on stage and she supported Jacob Fry, not the Somali who was running against him, although he, I think, in some sense thinks he's Somali or something like that. And she started talking about the clans that had betrayed her. Are you, I suppose you're not that surprised that they've imported this type of thinking into America when you hear something like that?
Oh, no, I'm not surprised at all. It's not that they imported. That is just how it functions. You cannot have, 70,000 to 80,000 people from Somalia living in Minnesota and not have a clan dynamic. It's all determined and ruled by the clan dynamic. What surprises and amuses me is that Jacob Fry decided to assimilate into the clan.
Is that possible? Is he the first one that ever did it?
No, he's not the first one. But anyway, he's decided he was going to assimilate into the clan. He probably thinks he's very clever. But he doesn't understand that this is another form of dancing with the devil where he's going to be fried, as in Fried.
Right. So, okay. So can you talk a bit about, there's a lot of focus now on these roughly 80,000 people in Minnesota and obviously what's going on with ICE and everything else. And so there's the fraud element of it. There's some element connected to illegal immigration, although a lot of the Somalis are legal, obviously, through Barack Obama. But what do you make of the whole situation right now that's happening, that's unfolding in Minnesota?
So it's got 3 components. There's the Somali ethnic bloodline component that we've just been discussing. And they do have an alternative moral system. They don't see what they're doing as stealing. They see it as helping family and helping the bloodline. And so if there's this alien, weak system that is dishing out money, if you don't take it, you're stupid. And also the assumption is we're not the only ones who would be doing such a thing. All smart people would be doing that. I wrote a piece on in the Free Press where I cite Edward Ban, who's just he's trying to explain to Americans about what he calls he calls it amoral familism, and this orientations towards the clan or the in-group at the cost of everything else. It's not unique to Somalis. I think it's probably once upon a time it was universal. But it cannot coexist within the nation state because the nation state is modern and the clan bloodline system is not just pre-modern, it's anti-modern. So there's that aspect of it, is that clan.
Mm-hmm.
And within that is another circle, which is the Muslim Brotherhood and the presence of the Muslim Brotherhood in America, dedicated to transforming America and Islamizing it from within. That's what they say. The way they do it, and they want to go about, is by bringing Muslim communities and turning them into these ethnic blocks that are Islamist and that will vote the way they tell them to vote, and will be this demographic representation. And then there's a third layer, which is amazingly the Democratic Party, which has created this business model, electoral business model, that they don't want to go and persuade voters about the programs they have in mind. They want to do the exact same thing as what the Muslim Brotherhood is doing, which is pump every state with just enough ethnic voter blocks to vote for them in exchange for providing them with benefits. And none of these three groups, the ethnic Somalis, the Muslim Brotherhood, or the Democratic Party, seem to think that that money comes from somewhere. Taxpayers, you and me, do you think we want to finance our demise? That's exactly what's going on. And so there's this conspiracy. That's not a conspiracy, but it is this, collusion.
So
All right, that's really interesting stuff. I guess, you know, we've all been looking at it the wrong way. I mean, if the money's available, if you don't take it, then I guess you're stupid. But then again, whatever. All right, let me go ahead and click on this Rumble link here and show you that this video does come from the Rubin Report. I am following his channel. I've given him a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. Utterly amazing. Okay, let me jump back here, close out the live chat, slide down here and get into some Wendy Bell. Trump to Tampon Tim, it stops now. Okay, well, let's see what this is all about.
things that should not have happened and could have been stopped by the people themselves who are now dead and others in the audience, right? We can sit here and we can go over. I'm not there. I'm not an ICE agent. I'm not an angry leftist. You know, I'm not involved in that. And so we're going to wait for all of that to flush out, right? But it's interesting. President Trump is now on the ball, and he's obviously been paying attention to what's going on. And we're going to talk about this change in tune a little bit on Tin Walls and Jacob Fry's part in Minneapolis and Minnesota. I want to start with this. I saw something in my youngest son the other day that I realize I'm starving for in quote unquote leaders. So my son Bobby is terrified of needles. Something happened obviously a million years ago when we were at the pediatrician, and he has just ever since then. I mean, he was a little muncher. He gets all worked up. He knows he's got a well visit or what have you coming up. And he would literally stress about knowing he would have to get shots. And he would stress about him for days. And he would work himself up in knots. And I would watch him, and he would turn ghastly white. And he would be embarrassed because he realized it was kind of silly and irrational, but it completely devoured him. And the day that we would go to the doctor, and he's a twin, right? So his twin brother, Chris, is like, he's respectful of it, but also needles him like, no pun, sorry. He's like, come on, let's go get our shots. And Bobby literally starts to sweat. So you can imagine how weird it was as my now almost 18-year-old son, Bobby, came downstairs the other day on a snow day. It was a cold weather day before this snowstorm hit in Pittsburgh. And the temperatures were pretty cold. And so the public schools had delayed the start of school by 2 hours. And because our buses are the same as theirs, our high school was delayed as well. So it's 8 a.m. And Bobby's coming downstairs. He's wearing his button down and his tie. They go to Catholic school. And he's got his khakis on and everything. And I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, it's the blood drive. And I was like, okay, where's the punchline, right? Like, Bobby, blood drive, these two things do not exist in the same environment, right? And he's like, it's the school blood drive, and I know nobody's going to show up, and I think I should. And I was like, why? And he said, well, because I said I would. Interesting. Because you said you would. I'm like, my son Bobby, who hates needles, is going to sit there and watch a giant needle go into his arm and have blood come out of it and not have a conniptio? Really? And I tried not to make a fuss about it. I'm like, oh, well, that's really great. So let me get this straight. You committed to it. You had every reason to bail on it because it started at 8 a.m., even with the school delay, the snow delay or the cold weather delay. And yet you're saying and doing what you said you were going to do. And I was like, that's so interesting to me. And he said, well, I told them that I would be there. So I'm going. And he got in the car and went to the blood drive and did his thing. That was the biggest development in this fear of my youngest son. Why are you going? Because I said I would. Because it matters to me. Because I want to prove to myself that I can get over this. And he did. Like, that matters as a young man, young woman, right? Facing things that make you uncomfortable, facing insecurities or irrational fears or what have you, whatever your jam is, we all have them. But to be a teenager and to buckle down, not because you wanted to score extra credit points, not because you hoped it would curry favor with some teacher at the school you were having problems with, but because at the end of the day, you wanted to look in the mirror and look at yourself and say, no matter how well I did it. And apparently there were problems with the woman getting the needle in and getting the blood out. And it was this big hassle. Like it couldn't have gone smoothly, right? I was like, oh, I wanted to hug him and kiss him, and they don't want that from me, right? So, and I had to look in the mirror and to be like, I did that. I mean, it's a little thing, but I did that, right? And the reason why I'm telling you this story, like, we expect from one another basic behavior, right? Basic ways that we treat each other. And when we're trying to find somebody who says they want to lead us, whether it's our neighborhood or our city, our state, or our country, you want that person who's like, look, because I said so, because I said I would, and I'm doing it now. And we don't have that right now in so many of our states. We don't have what my almost 18-year-old son, Bobby, has, and it's the expectation of ourselves to stand by our word, to do what we say we're going to do, to deliver to people, to care, yes, about other people, but to realize at the end of the day, you got to look in the mirror and you have to be comfortable with what you see looking back at you. Tim Walz is not one of these leaders. This is not a guy. I don't know if he's a bad guy, a good guy. It seems like he's a bad guy in my mind. But I can't really see how he comes home at night, right? And looks himself in the mirror. Now, something happened interestingly yesterday. And President Trump had a phone conversation about what's going on in Minneapolis. And they came to some meeting of the minds, and things are changing, and we're going to talk about that. But I want you to hear a changing Tim Walz, almost like he looked in the mirror and didn't like what he saw back. Here he is on a local radio program talking about this phone conversation with President Trump. Tell me, does this sound like the Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, who's been calling Donald Trump a fascist, a Nazi, a dictator? You tell me.
I would characterize, along with the president, I think it was productive.
Yeah. So let's start with that call. I understand that you initiated it. Is that correct?
We asked for it a while back, and this was the time they came through. I got a early morning call from the president's chief of staff, who we have been communicating with regularly, several times a day, myself or my team speaking with Susie Wiles. And she said, the president wants to speak with you. And they called back in to us, and we spoke for about 15 minutes.
Did the president make any firm commitments that the course of this immigration operation will change?
Well, I asked two things were clear. First of all, I asked that we have a fair and independent investigation into the murder of both Renee Good and Alex, and that we have to be able to do that. And he said, we'll look at that. We'll take a look at that. And I said, we just have to reduce these numbers. We started out with that. And he pledged that, look, I'm going to send Tom Holman in. We'll do things differently. He explained to me how he thought it was very successful in Louisiana, very successful in Louisville, which I shared with him, but ICE did not shoot anybody there, and the presence was much smaller and much more targeted. Like they were doing actual ICE work. This is, as we've seen, massive numbers. So it was cordial. I think he understood this. I told him that this is unsustainable, and I said, quite honestly, no one wants this, and I hope that's true. No one wants this.
What about the investigation? I mean, you asked for him to allow state investigators into the fold regarding the deaths of Alex Preddy and Renee Macklin Good. What precisely did he say in
He said he would look into it, and he said, look into it. I hear you. We'll look into it.
And what if that doesn't happen?
Well, then we'll keep pushing. I mean, this is, and I want to be very careful here. I don't want to, and one of the reasons that I am staying a little behind the scenes and working constantly on those calls is that part of this is about how you're viewed by this White House. I think the listeners here in Minnesota know that I'm somewhat of a lightning rod for this administration. I certainly don't want to be that, but I've had to be speaking up about the atrocities that we're seeing and pushing back. So at this point in time, the president certainly seemed earnest. He pledged to me that we would do this. As I said, we've been in communication over the weekend with his team pretty extensively. I'm understanding now that, and he said he would have Tom Holman in here, and we'll be in touch, I hope, later tonight. I'm understanding that Mr. Bovino and Kristi Noem are no longer going to be here. I would take that a step further. I would hope they're no longer in jobs because they've helped foster this. And we spoke a little bit, and I tried to make the case about Alex. I just spent a set-down hour with his colleague.
So I wanted to talk to him about the guy who lost his life. He couldn't hold himself back from taking a dig, of course, at Kristi Noem and Greg Bovino from Border Security. Now, I wanted you to hear that in its entirety. Different than we've heard Tim Walz, yes? Are we deceived by this? Has he been humbled? Is he making a deal with President Trump? I'll tell you what you need to know. I just don't want to go down with the ship. You decide. Next on the Wendy Bell Radio Network.
Okay, let me move this forward here, and I'm sorry about the sound not coming through. I mean, it comes through on my headphones, so I'm not aware of it until, I've got it on the TV, but I didn't notice that the sound wasn't coming through on the TV because I was listening so intently through my headphones. I'll try to pay more attention, but here again, I don't understand why it doesn't happen. I mean, I start these videos the same way. Every video is the first 3 videos that I played, the audio came through, but for Wendy Bell, it didn't. I don't get it.
Is a contrite. Do you guys remember Operation Chaos? Rush Limbaugh's Operation Chaos. Welcome back to the Wendy Bell Radio program. I do. It was 2008. It was when Obama was up against John McCain. And John McCain chose Sarah Palin and Barack Obama, right? And so Rush wanted everybody who was a Republican who could, in the states that they could, to either cross over in the primaries, and he thought that Obama was more likable. Most people didn't like Hillary, and she was a liar, known liar back then in the day. And the feeling about her was poor, but he wanted those two to be fighting so that John McCain could go out as the Republican and become more well-known and get more people paying attention to him, et cetera, et cetera. Operation Chaos now is to do whatever you can to destroy, to upend normal mores of behavior, to disrupt neighborhoods, to bang on metal pans, to, create noise, disrupt the functioning and the sanity and the normalcy of society under Donald Trump. It's bananas, and it's obvious, it's counterproductive, and it pisses the average American off, yes? So now there's Tim Walz. Yeah, I talked to the president. He still takes his digs at him, but he's a lot more contrite. He's a lot more humble, right? Something's going on there, of course. I want you to hear Anonymous, one of our favorite people again. And Anonymous is looking at Minnesota and says, did Democrats engineer a system there so they could cheat? Because Minneapolis didn't become one of the largest fraud ecosystems by accident. I'm not taking Tim Walz, goofy guy, goofy teacher guy, coach guy. I don't believe any of that. I think there's something a lot darker and more disturbing there. Here's Anonymous.
It becomes reasonable to ask whether the system was merely exploited or designed to be exploitable. That is the allegation. That a political machine may have engineered conditions where cheating the system was tolerated, protected, and politically useful. And when reporters and whistleblowers started pulling the thread, the response wasn't transparency, it was delay, deflection, minimization, breakdowns in order, organized resistance, and escalating street unrest. The allegation is that Minneapolis did not become the center of one of the largest fraud ecosystems in modern American history by accident. The allegation is that it required a system, a structure, and people in and out of government willing to run it. And when you examine who built and protected that system, a pattern emerges. Not local stewardship, but imported control. Minnesota's Attorney General, Keith Ellison, from Detroit, Michigan. The mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, from Virginia. The Minneapolis Police Chief, Brian O'Hara, brought in from Massachusetts. Attorney General, Mayor, Police Chief. And the Governor, Tim Walz, presiding over it all. That alone does not prove wrongdoing, but it does raise a legitimate question. Why does a state with deep political talent repeatedly place outsiders in control of its most sensitive institutions At the same time, the largest fraud allegations in its history are unfolding. I'll say it again. The allegation is that the system was designed to be exploitable. The allegation is that Somali refugee settlement was intentionally concentrated, not dispersed, changing the political makeup of a city and state permanently. No blending, no assimilation, just change. The allegation is that this concentration created an environment without meaningful checks and balances, where massive cheating could occur at scale. And the allegation is that Democrat political leadership benefited from that arrangement by importing and concentrating a like-minded population willing to exploit the system. That conclusion is not drawn from prejudice. It's drawn from patterns, money flows, and federal indictments already on the record. If the allegation is right, it explains everything. My friends, we are all anonymous, and when systems are engineered, populations are concentrated, and billions disappear, people are allowed to notice.
The one place where we thought we would never experience this is the U.S. damn states.
Wow. And the pattern is clear. You guys remember the former KGB agent, Yuri Bezmenov? This was like 1970s, 1980s, talking about ideological subversion to cover up everything that you know is going on behind the scenes.
What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow.
Very slowly, and it takes decades. We could go back decades and see what's been going on to create the newest young generation of clone troopers, ladies and gentlemen. Some people are brainwashed, others see it happening. Why? When we come back on the Wendy Bell radio program, let's talk about President Trump saying it ends now, what he wants from Minnesota, and what he and his administration are going to do to stop the violence and dig into the fraud. Next.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause that there. Let me click on this Rumble link here and show you that this video does come from Wendy Bell Radio. I am following her channel. I've given her a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. And before we move on, I do want to share this information from 1775 Coffee.
Still haven't tried 1775 coffee? Now's your shot. The 1775 starter kit just dropped, only 1,000 units. You're getting the bold dark roast that hits hard, the smooth medium roast, and the Vitality Mushroom Coffee for clean energy and laser focus, no crash.
All single origin, small batch, toxin-free, and mold-free. Plus you're also getting a gold spoon clip because freedom isn't scooped with plastic. A frother strong enough to stir up your coffee and your mother-in-law's opinions. And a black 1775 tumbler.
$170 worth of coffee and gear, yours for $99. This is for the ones who've been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble, wondering if it's actually worth it. Spoiler, it is.
Go to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab your starter kit before they're gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something, just like Rumble does.
Okay, I've copied the live chats into a comment box here, so I can save that with the video, and it will be part of this video. As you know, when the live stream is over, the chats just kind of evaporate. But I do want to remind you folks that these videos that I've shared with you tonight are videos that come directly from the producer. You got the links to the videos as well as the links to the producer's channel. This information that I share with you, I don't get any commissions or royalties on. I just do it to give information out. No nonsense, common sense, logic, and truth. And these videos that I do share with you are videos that I've posted here on Mertech.com, where I have over 55 no-nonsense, common sense, logic, and truth videos. I ask that you visit vertech.com if you want to see some more truth, the kind of information that you're not going to get from the mainstream media. But I'd like to share all of that information with you. Unfortunately, I don't have the time. That's why I've put together my daily news wrap-up. Here's the video from AP for Liberty that I shared with you earlier, and the Wendy Bell video that I just finished up with here. And then I've got actually 28 videos in here and over 9 hours of information. I'm going to do a little rearranging of this, get my Rumble Studio set up, so you can go ahead and take a break, grab a cup of coffee and a donut, or a sandwich and a soft drink or a beer, or a nice glass of wine and some cheese, and meet me back here at 9:30 and we'll get this going. But in the meantime, I do want to thank you for spending your time with me. Hopefully, I'll get to see you again later, and may God bless.